I flew into Boise on a Friday afternoon because my mother insisted on a graduation party. I finished my engineering degree through the Army's education program, and she wanted a proper family celebration. I rented a compact car at the airport, drove to the house I grew up in, and parked behind a line of SUVs. The yard looked ready for a magazine photo. Rented tables, plastic tablecloths, string lights, a Bluetooth speaker playing country hits from 5 years ago. My sister, Melissa, waved like a mayor, greeting voters. My mother, Linda, moved from guest to guest with a glass of white wine and a smile that never dropped. I carried a small duffel bag with a card and a simple gift for my dad. He wasn't on the patio. He usually disappears during these things: hardware store, living room TV, anywhere warm and quiet. I put the duffel by the sliding door and walked to the food table. Burgers, coleslaw, store-bought salad, deviled eggs. In the corner sat a cake box with a blue sticker from a grocery bakery. I lifted the lid. White frosting. Blue letters. Congratulations, Lieutenant Morgan. The baker forgot the period. Not a big deal. Claire's here, my mother called, as if I might miss it. Melissa stepped in like she owned the property, which technically she did not. She wore a bright dress that said, "I planned this," and a grin that said the same thing. "You made it," she said. "How was your big soldier school?" "It's a regular college," I said. "I finished my capstone. The Army covered tuition." "Right," she said, like she didn't believe me but wanted credit for pretending. "Well, we did almost everything today. You can relax, eat, try the slaw. Mom drove across town for it." I said thanks and poured myself iced tea. Guests took turns hugging me, some sincere, some quick. The small talk never touched my degree. It went to housing prices, flights, daycare, Melissa's last trip to Florida, and a cousin's side hustle selling vitamins. My mother made a toast about hard work that mentioned discipline 3 times and me once. Melissa clapped with her fingers barely touching. 2 of her friends looked me up and down and asked if I ever shoot the big guns. I said no and took another sip. The cake sat close to the edge of the folding table. Every time someone reached for a bun, the table shifted. I slid the cake inward 2 inches, then stepped back. Melissa noticed and smiled like I had done something cute. Kids ran across the lawn. One tripped over a sprinkler head. A dog grabbed a napkin and shredded it. The Bluetooth speaker cut for a second and reconnected. My mother asked if I brought my dress uniform. I said no, because this wasn't a ceremony, it was a backyard barbecue. She made a face. "I figured you'd want to wear it," she said. "People love uniforms." "Though, I wear it at work," I said. "Not for potato salad." Melissa laughed. "You should have worn it. Would have matched the cake." A few guests circled the food again. My mother waved me toward the cake knife. "Cut and say something," she said. "Keep it short." I washed my hands at the kitchen sink, came back, and picked up the plastic knife. I wasn't going to give a speech. I planned one simple thank you. "Thanks for coming, thanks for the support, glad to be done." Basic. I lifted the lid again and slid the cake toward the front so I could reach it without leaning. Melissa stood opposite me, glass in hand. "Okay, folks," she said, "moment of truth. Soldier cake." "It's just cake," I said. Melissa shrugged. "Everything is a moment with you." I rested the knife on the frosting. Melissa's smile tightened. She put her glass down and reached across me with 2 fingers like she was pointing at the wording. Then she pushed. It wasn't an accident. The cake box and the board beneath it slid off the plastic table. The board hit the deck first. The cake flipped, smeared, and landed frosting side down. It made a dull sound, not dramatic, but enough to turn heads. Frosting spread. A strawberry rolled toward a chair leg and stopped. Melissa looked at the mess, and then at me. "Go ahead, Lieutenant," she said. "Eat it off the ground." There was a beat where nobody said anything. Then 2 of her friends laughed. Someone at the far table didn't see what happened and laughed anyway. My mother let out a loud, practiced laugh that covered the small ones. She shook her head like this was harmless fun we all agreed to have. I set the knife down. No speeches, no announcement. I wasn't going to bend down, scrape frosting into a plate, and pretend nothing happened. I wasn't going to argue in front of 30 people while chicken smoke drifted across the yard and a dog licked a paper plate. "Come on, Claire," my mother said. "Don't be dramatic. It's a joke." "Funny," Melissa said. opening her hands like a magician who just sawed a box in half. Some of us can take a joke. I reached for a stack of napkins. I handed them to the nearest adult instead of cleaning it myself. I wasn't service staff. Someone else could handle the floor sugar. I untied the cheap apron my mother had given me when I arrived, white with lemons, and set it on the table. The Bluetooth cut again and came back on with the volume too high. A kid cheered at the noise like it was part of the show. "Where are you going?" my mother asked. "Inside," I said. "Why?" "For water." "You just poured iced tea." "I want water," I said. I went through the sliding door, straight to the sink, and filled a glass. The kitchen smelled like bleach and onion. I could hear conversation outside, louder now that people had something to talk about. "She's sensitive. She's always been like this. Military makes people stiff." I finished the water, set the glass in the rack, and wiped my hands on a towel that said, "Live, laugh, love." "Okay." I picked up my small duffel from beside the door. My car keys were in the side pocket, same place as always. My phone buzzed with a text from a friend in Washington asking if the party was sweet or awkward. I typed awkward and didn't hit send. The screen went black. I put the phone in my jeans pocket and opened the sliding door again. On the deck, 2 people had started scooping pieces of cake into the trash. The board had left a streak on the floor. Melissa told a loud story about Florida weather that had nothing to do with anything. My mother watched me move toward the steps like I was breaking a rule nobody wrote down. "You're not leaving," she said. "I have an early drive," I said. "It's your party," she said. "We haven't done presents." "Now." "I don't need presents," I said. "Don't be rude," she said louder. "Rude?" Melissa said, delighted at the word. "I'm tired," I said. "Thanks for organizing. I'm heading out." I didn't hug anyone. I didn't make an announcement on the microphone because there wasn't one. I walked down the 2 steps from the deck to the lawn, cut across near the shed, and went through the side gate. The latch stuck. It always sticks. I lifted it slightly, and it opened. I closed it behind me and walked to the car. Nobody followed. The Bluetooth music kept playing. The smell of lighter fluid hung in the air near the fence. I unlocked the rental, put the bag on the passenger seat, and Saturday, the seats were too warm from the Sunday. I adjusted the back support, started the engine, and looked at the dashboard clock. Early evening. I turned the AC to a normal level, not the blast the last renter must have used. I checked my mirrors and pulled away from the curb. In the rearview mirror, I could still see string lights over the fence. I drove down the block at the speed limit, turned right, and hit the main road toward the highway. A pickup cut me off without a signal. I tapped the brake. The traffic light ahead turned yellow, then red. I stopped, rolled my shoulders back, and dropped my chin to loosen my neck. The light turned green. I took the on-ramp and merged. The highway stretched out clean. I set cruise control 2 miles under the limit because state police love that stretch. The radio was off. I left it off. My phone buzzed on the seat. I let it buzz. It buzzed again. I clicked the side button to silence notifications without looking. The sky over the foothills was clear, and the temperature was dropping. I passed a billboard for a mattress sale, then a sign for a fireworks outlet that opens every June and closes every July. I kept the car in the right lane and stayed there. When I reached the state line, the sun sat lower and the traffic thinned. I could have stopped for fast food, but I didn't want salt and regret. I kept going. The town names on the exit signs ticked by. I moved my phone from the seat to the cup holder so it wouldn't slide. It buzzed once, then stopped. I didn't check it. I focused on the road, the distance, and the simple fact that I was already on my way. The road kept stretching through the dark until the glow of Boise disappeared behind me. The dashboard clock hit 11:37 p.m. I rolled the window down halfway, letting in the cold air to stay awake. The smell of asphalt and pine cut through the leftover barbecue smoke still clinging to my jacket. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just drove, eyes fixed on the lines of the highway like I was back on convoy duty. The silence in the car wasn't empty. It was clean. When I pulled into my apartment complex in Spokane, it was almost 3 a.m. The parking lot was empty except for a couple of sedans and one pickup that hadn't moved in months. I grabbed my bag, locked the car, and walked up to the second floor. The key stuck for a second before turning like everything in my life needed an extra push tonight. Inside, the apartment felt too quiet. The clock above the microwave blinked 2:58, mocking me for the road time I'd spent thinking about nothing and everything. I tossed the jacket on the chair and went straight for a glass of water. The fridge hummed softly. I stared at the reflection on the window. Messy hair, tired eyes, and frosting stains still on my sleeve. That part made me laugh once, short and bitter. My phone buzzed on the counter. For a split second, I thought it might be an apology, maybe from Mom, maybe even Melissa. I unlocked it. Mom, we've decided to cut you off. Don't come back. Underneath it, a small red heart. Melissa's like. The message sat there, plain as paperwork. No explanation, no apology. Just a final order dressed up as self-righteousness. I stared at it until the screen dimmed. Then I turned it face down and took another drink of water. The glass felt heavier than it was. My reflection on the window didn't look sad. It looked tired of trying to earn decency from people who treated kindness like currency. I walked to the desk where I kept my laptop. The old Army-issued bag sat underneath, still dusty from training days. I flipped open the laptop and the screen blinked awake, bright and sterile. A spreadsheet was already open, my monthly budget tracker. I'd set it up years ago when I started helping Mom with bills. 2 lines near the top stared back at me. Parents' mortgage, Arba Me'ot, month, auto pay, Melissa's SUV, $620 divided by month, auto pay. Both green, both set to withdraw next week. I hadn't thought about them in months. I just let it run, like paying dues for a club that never accepted me. The first time Mom asked for help, I was 27 and fresh from a deployment. She said Dad was between jobs and Melissa's business needed a boost. I co-signed because she said I was the responsible one. I told myself it was love. It was duty. It was what family did. I opened my banking app on the phone. The totals glared at me. I scrolled through transactions, automatic withdrawals, no missed payments, never late. I'd kept their credit spotless while mine carried the weight. I leaned back and laughed quietly, not from humor but from realization. 3 years of loyalty, bought and sold at the price of a cake. The clock hit 3:30. I opened a new note on my phone and typed, removing my name from every loan tomorrow. No emoji, no explanation, just a statement of fact. The next morning came with the kind of gray sky only Spokane knows, flat light, drizzle, the kind that doesn't pour but seeps into your jacket. I brewed coffee, black, no sugar. The smell filled the kitchen, and for the first time, the silence didn't bother me. It felt like control. By 9 a.m., my phone started vibrating, nonstop texts from Mom, missed calls, group chat notifications. I didn't check them. I knew the tone already. Anger disguised as concern, guilt wrapped as family love. I let them pile up while I tied my hair back, pulled on a gray sweater, and checked my uniform bag out of habit. Old habits die hard when your life runs on routine. I sat at the desk again, sipped coffee, and started sorting documents. Bank statements, pay stubs, lease agreement, deployment orders, all proof I lived independently, that their debt wasn't mine. Each paper had weight, each one felt like ammunition. My phone buzzed again. A voicemail notification. Curiosity won this time. Mom's voice came through, calm but sharp. Claire, you're overreacting. You embarrassed yourself last night. We were joking. Don't make this worse by being petty. You know we rely on you for those payments. We'll talk when you cool down. Alt, click, end of message. I played it twice, just to be sure I heard right. We rely on you. Not thank you. Not sorry. Just the reminder that I was their safety net. I closed the banking app, logged into the loan portal, and stared at the joint borrower information page. My name sat neatly beside Linda and Melissa Grant. The words looked sterile and binding at the same time. I hovered over the Request Co-Borrower Removal button. It asked for supporting documents. I already had them ready in a folder named Operation Boundary. The name wasn't random, it was something Major Hayes once said during training. Every soldier needs to know where their boundary is, or they'll get walked over by chaos. My thumb clicked the upload button, and I attached each file, lease, income verification, proof of residency, and a copy of the message from Mom that said, "The house is ours, you just helped sign." That line would do more for me than any lawyer. The confirmation screen blinked green. Your request has been submitted. A representative will contact you within 48 hours. I exhaled slowly. The hum of the fridge sounded almost like applause. For the first time in a long time, my mind wasn't racing. No guilt, no second guessing, just a strange stillness that came when you stopped being the one holding everyone else up. The rain outside started to pick up, a steady tapping on the window. I pulled my phone closer and checked the family group chat. 97 unread messages. The last one was from Melissa. Mom says you're acting like a soldier, not a sister. Guess that uniform made you forget what loyalty means. I typed back one line. It taught me loyalty has to go both ways. Then I muted the chat. The afternoon stretched quiet. I did laundry, folded uniforms, and cleared the clutter on the counter. It wasn't avoidance, it was maintenance. The kind that keeps your brain from spinning. Every motion felt deliberate. By evening, I reheated leftover soup and sat by the window with my laptop open. I started listing everything still tied to my name: family loans, shared phone plans, insurance. I'd spent years keeping everyone else's credit stable while my savings stayed flat. It wasn't family. It was servitude dressed as obligation. At 9 p.m., another message from Mom came through. I hope you realize how selfish you're being. You'll ruin our credit. Melissa's car could be repossessed. You don't do this to family. I didn't reply. I just whispered, exactly. Then I clicked back to the loan portal and double-checked the document submission. Everything showed received. The release process had started. The phone kept lighting up with new messages, each one more desperate than the last. I watched them appear and disappear on the lock screen until I finally flipped the phone face down again. The clock hit midnight. The apartment was silent except for the rain against the glass. My mug was empty, my head clear. The kind of calm that comes not from peace, but from decision. I turned off the lights and sat in the dark for a while. No music, no noise, just breathing. For once, I wasn't thinking about how to fix it. I was thinking about how it would finally feel to stop being the one who pays for everyone else's mistakes. The rain kept falling, steady and sure, as if the whole city understood what I'd just done. The next morning started the way all Army mornings do: coffee strong enough to peel paint and a checklist in my head before my boots even hit the floor. My phone was still buzzing with unread messages, but I left it on silent. I'd made my decision. The rest was just noise. I pulled into Fort Lewis at 0700 sharp. The air had that early chill that seeps through the uniform no matter how many layers you wear. Soldiers were already jogging across the lot, voices echoing from morning drills. It felt good to be somewhere structure made sense. Orders, reports, logic, things my family had never mastered. In the comms bay, I logged into the secure terminal and began running diagnostics on a relay system. My hands worked automatically, muscle memory from years of repetition. The hum of electronics filled the room, steady and predictable. Predictability was underrated. Lieutenant Morgan, a voice called behind me. I turned to see Major Daniel Hayes, mid-50s, silver hair, sleeves rolled like a man who never really retired from the field. He had that calm posture that only came from decades of watching chaos and refusing to let it win. "Morning, sir," I said. He nodded toward my workstation. "You look like you've been here since dawn." "Now, just finishing the comm relay update," I said. "System kept timing out last week." Hayes studied me a moment longer than usual. "You've got that stare," he said. "The one that says you're solving two problems. One technical, one personal." I almost smiled. "You're not wrong." He leaned against the table. "Want to talk about it, or do you need plausible deniability?" I hesitated. Hayes wasn't the type to pry, but he was the kind who saw through the armor. "It's a family issue," I said finally. "Not mission-related, but complicated." He nodded once, slow. Complicated usually means boundary problems. I looked up. "How'd you guess?" "Because soldiers like you always try to fix everyone," he said. "We run logistics like we run emotions efficiently until someone else decides to dump their load on us. Then we just keep carrying it." I let out a small breath that felt heavier than I expected. "You ever stop carrying it?" Hayes smiled. Faint, but real. "Yeah, when I realized not every hill's worth dying on. Even family hills." I laughed under my breath. "That's the thing, sir. I didn't even start this fight. they just decided I was the enemy. He crossed his arms. You got paperwork tied to them? 2 loans. I've been paying both for years. I started a release process yesterday. Good, he said immediately. Get it done clean. Family guilt is just emotional debt. And trust me, financial debt's the part that actually ruins lives. Already in motion, I said. Then you're doing the right thing. Just make sure you're not leaving loose ends. Paper cuts can turn into wounds in this kind of war. His phrasing stuck, this kind of war. It wasn't gunfire or tactics. It was bureaucracy and bloodlines. Permission to speak freely? I asked. Always, he said. It feels wrong, I said quietly, like breaking an oath I never agreed to take. That, he considered that. You ever run a comm line through a combat zone? Yes, sir. And when someone keeps cutting the cable, what do? Secure it. Or cut them out of the network, I said. Exactly. Hayes picked up a clipboard and started walking toward the door. That's all you're doing. Securing your line, cutting the interference. He paused and looked back. And Morgan? Yes, sir. Never apologize for setting boundaries. People who love you won't need to be convinced. I'd moles. He left me with that and the soft buzz of monitors filling the silence. I stayed an extra hour after my shift, running maintenance tests that didn't need running. Part of it was habit. The other part was because quiet work kept the thoughts organized. Every checklist ticked off was one less spiral. By 1600, I logged out and headed for the parking lot. The drizzle from the morning had turned to sunlight, the kind that made the base look almost peaceful. A few soldiers were smoking near the gate, laughing about weekend plans. I wasn't sure what I'd do with mine yet. Probably nothing. Nothing sounded good. On the drive home, my phone buzzed again, unknown number. I ignored it. Then another buzz, same number. I pulled over at a gas station and checked the voicemail. This is Mr. Calder from Summit First National Bank, the voice said. Lieutenant Morgan, I've reviewed your documents. Please stop by the downtown branch tomorrow. We can move forward with your co-borrower release. I replayed it once just to hear the certainty in his tone. We can move forward. That sounded like permission. The next morning, I put on civilian clothes, jeans, jacket, nothing sharp or official. I didn't want the uniform to make the meeting look like a confrontation. The downtown branch had glass walls and soft music that didn't match the tension in my stomach. The receptionist directed me to an office with pale blue walls and a fern in the corner. Mr. Calder looked exactly how you'd expect a banker to look: gray suit, wire-rimmed glasses, polite smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Lieutenant Morgan, he said, shaking my hand. Thanks for coming in. I reviewed the details you sent. You've been making payments on both loans for nearly 3 years? Yes, sir, I said. And you're not listed as a property owner or vehicle title holder? Correct. He nodded, flipping through the folder. You've been very consistent with payments. That actually helps your case. It shows good faith. We'll need to confirm documentation, but it looks clean. I handed him a printed email from my mother that read, "The house is ours, you just helped sign." Calder's eyebrows rose slightly. This should suffice. Hi. He picked up the phone, called someone from legal, and explained the situation like he'd done it 100 times. I caught phrases like release process and verification of independence. Each word sounded bureaucratic, but I heard what it really meant: freedom and progress. He hung up and looked back at me. Here's how it'll go. We process the removal. Your name gets cleared. The payments become theirs exclusively. Once the notice is finalized, they'll be informed directly. I nodded. Good. Be prepared, he said, lowering his voice. When people lose their financial lifeline, they tend to lash out before they accept it. I smiled faintly. I'm in the Army, Mr. Calder. I'm used to incoming fire. He laughed once. Fair enough. We signed what needed signing. His pen clicked with a quiet authority. Every signature I made felt like cutting another cord that had been strangling me for years. When he stamped the final page, the sound echoed through the small office. Effective immediately, he said. You're officially off both accounts. I sat there for a second, staring at the paper. The weight of it didn't hit me like an explosion. It settled more like gravity lifting. Calder gathered the forms. We'll send you written confirmation within a few days. If they contact you, refer them to me. You've done everything correctly. Thank you, I said, standing. Really? He smiled again, this time more genuine. You did the right thing, Lieutenant. Protecting yourself doesn't make you the villain. Outside, the air smelled different. Sharp, cold, alive. I walked 2 blocks to a small cafe and ordered a cappuccino. The barista smiled as she handed it over. "Have a good day," she said. I met her eyes and said, "I will," and I meant it. I sat near the window, watching people rush past in their morning routines, carrying their own invisible battles. I wasn't special. I was just finally free of a war I never enlisted in. When I checked my phone again, there were 15 missed calls, 2 voicemails, and 1 new text from Melissa. "What did you do with the bank?" I didn't answer. I just finished my coffee, left a tip, and walked out into the sunlight. The hum of the city faded behind me, and for the first time in a long time, the silence wasn't heavy, it was steady. The first call came before I even made it back to my apartment. My phone lit up in the passenger seat, Mom. I let it ring. Then came Melissa. Then Mom. Again. I turned the screen face down and kept driving. The late afternoon sun cut through the windshield, turning the road ahead into a glare that matched the static in my head. By the time I parked, the voicemail icon showed 7 new messages. I didn't bother listening. I'd done what I had to do. Mr. Calder had said, "They'll be notified directly." That meant the paper war had officially begun. Inside the apartment, I hung my jacket on the hook and dropped my keys in the bowl. The space smelled faintly of coffee and laundry detergent, clean, quiet, simple. I'd built it that way for a reason. I didn't need chaos here. I'd had enough of that for a lifetime. The laptop was still open on my desk from the night before. I refreshed my email. Nothing from the bank yet, just work updates and a base memo about communications training next week. I checked the clock. It was only 5 p.m. The day felt heavier than it should. I turned on the TV for background noise, news, commercials, chatter, but none of it stuck. The sound felt too human for the kind of silence I wanted. I shut it off again. At 5:22, the phone finally stopped buzzing. Then, 3 minutes later, it started again. This time, it was a text from Melissa. "You've destroyed everything. Mom's credit is ruined. The bank froze our accounts. Are you proud of yourself?" I didn't reply. I just stared at the words until they blurred a little. Then I opened the Notes app and typed, "Operation Boundary. Phase 2. Maintain silence." The phrase came naturally. In the Army, silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. You don't give the enemy a reaction until you know their next move. I made dinner a simple one, just pasta with olive oil and garlic, and sat by the window while I ate. Across the street, a couple walked their dog, talking about weekend plans. A neighbor hauled groceries up the stairs. Life went on, like it always does when yours is falling apart in private. At 7:04, another text came through. "Answer the phone, Claire. This isn't funny. You've gone too far." I locked the screen again. The more they panicked, the calmer I felt. Maybe that's what happens when you spend too long letting everyone else dictate your emotions. You finally run out of permission slips for guilt. By 9 p.m., the messages shifted tone. Less anger, more desperation. "You can't just cut us off. We're family. Do you even understand what you've done? Your father's heart can't take this stress." I could almost hear Mom's voice in every line. Sweetened manipulation disguised as concern. The same tone she used when she wanted me to send money for repairs, or just help out until Melissa's business picks up. I muted the thread entirely. Later that night, I opened my email and drafted one to Mr. Calder, short and professional. "Mr. Calder, please confirm the release request was received and processed. Thank you for your help today. Lieutenant Claire Morgan." I didn't sign sincerely. This wasn't about sincerity anymore. It was about closure. The next morning, I woke up early. Habit, not anxiety. I brewed coffee, showered, and put on my uniform even though it was Saturday. Routine was armor. It kept me sharp. The phone buzzed again, this time a different number. I hesitated before answering. "Lieutenant Morgan?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes. This is Karen from Summit First National. I'm calling to confirm your co-borrower release has been approved and finalized. You're officially removed from all associated accounts. Notification letters have been sent to the primary borrowers." For a second, the air in the room changed. Lighter somehow. I straightened up. "So it's official?" "Yes, ma'am. It's done. You'll receive your confirmation in writing early next week. Thank you, I said. When the call ended, I stared at the phone a moment longer. The hum in my chest wasn't adrenaline, it was relief. Not the dramatic kind, just quiet release. The kind that feels like unclenching your fist after years of pretending it didn't hurt. At noon, I decided to drive out to the edge of town, the old highway overlooking the water. It was the kind of place where no one asked questions. I parked the car, got out, and leaned against the guardrail. The sky was pale blue, the air clean. I pulled out my phone, opened the family chat, and scrolled through everything I hadn't read. It was like watching a storm hit in slow motion. Dozens of messages. Anger, blame, accusation. Then I saw one from Mom that stood out. You'll regret this, Claire. Blood doesn't disappear because you say so. I read it twice, then screenshotted it and saved it in a folder called Evidence. Not because I planned to use it, but because I'd learned that keeping records is better than keeping peace. I texted one simple line back. I just stopped paying for people who laughed when my cake hit the floor. Then I turned the phone off. The wind came off the water, sharp but clean. For once, I didn't feel like I was running from anything. That night, I got a call from Major Hayes. He didn't waste time with small talk. Good minute, Lieutenant? Always, I said. You look like someone who just finished a long operation, he said, his tone half teasing. You could say that, I said. He chuckled. Whatever it was, you seem lighter. Keep that. Most people don't know when to let go of things that weigh them down. I'm learning, I said. That's the job, he replied. Learning when to fight and when to step back. The good officers know the difference. I didn't say anything. He didn't need me to. When the call ended, I sat back on the couch, still in uniform, and let the quiet fill the room. The clock ticked, the fridge hummed, and somewhere outside a car alarm chirped once before stopping. Normal sounds. Ordinary peace. I thought about what Hayes said about fighting and stepping back. For most of my life, I thought endurance was strength. That if you just kept taking it, kept holding everyone together, it meant you were tough. But standing alone in that silence, I realized endurance isn't strength if it only keeps you trapped. I looked at the uniform draped across the chair and smiled faintly. The Army taught me about control, order, discipline, but it never taught me how to use those things at home. That part I was figuring out myself. My laptop pinged a new email from Mr. Calder. Subject: Confirmation of release Lieutenant Claire Morgan. Body: This email confirms your removal from all joint liability related to the Grant family mortgage and vehicle loan. Documents attached for your records. I opened the PDF. My name struck through in both contracts. Just like that one clean line erased years of quiet resentment. I didn't print it. I didn't need a physical reminder. The knowledge was enough. As I closed the laptop, my phone lit up again, unknown number, local area code. Probably Mom, calling from a borrowed phone. I let it go to voicemail. Then another buzz, this time a text. You think you've won? You'll pay for this. I locked the screen and whispered to myself, winning wasn't the point. The point was peace, and I was finally starting to feel what that actually meant. I stood, turned off the lights, and let the hum of the apartment fade into stillness. No fear, no guilt, no noise, just the sound of everything that wasn't mine finally falling quiet. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating across the nightstand like it was having a seizure. I didn't even have to look to know who it was. I could practically feel the guilt radiating from the screen. I poured coffee first, because caffeine before chaos, that's the rule. When I finally glanced at the phone, I saw over 100 missed messages from the family group chat. I scrolled through the first few just for sport. You've gone too far. How could you do this to your own mother? You're destroying our family's reputation. Then there was one from my dad, which surprised me because he usually avoided digital warfare altogether. This is between you and your mother. Don't drag me into it. Of course. Neutrality, the Morgan family way. I tossed the phone on the couch and took a long sip of coffee. By the time I logged into work, my inbox looked like a Christmas tree, bright red flags everywhere. But none of them were emergencies, at least not real ones. I handled system reports, responded to a few soldiers who needed data pulled for training simulations, and tuned out the buzz from my phone. Around noon, Sergeant Miller popped his head into my office. Ma'am, you good? You've been staring at that screen for a while. I'm fine, I said, though my reflection in the monitor looked like someone who'd been fighting ghosts all night. He hesitated, then said, Ma'am, off the record you want me to run interference for whatever's blowing up your phone? You look like someone's ex is calling from the grave. I laughed once, sharp and short. It's not an ex, it's family, which is kind of worse. He grinned. Copy that. Then he left me with my quiet war zone. At 1,300, the texts escalated to calls, then voicemails. Mom had switched tactics from outrage to martyrdom. Her voice cracked in the recording. Claire, please. We can't get access to the joint account. The mortgage payment's due. Do you know what you've done? The bank won't even talk to us now. You've made us look like fools. That last line told me everything. It wasn't about money, it was about image. The Morgan family could survive financial ruin. But public embarrassment? That was unforgivable. Bituhat kuusisata, Melissa took her turn. You really think this makes you look strong? You're heartless. You ruined Mom's credit and my car payment. The repo guy called this morning. I hope you're proud. I muted the chat again. My peace wasn't negotiable. That night, as I was leaving base, I stopped by the commissary for groceries. The cashier, a young private with an earnest face, scanned my ID and smiled. Rough day, ma'am? I smirked. Something like that. He bagged the items and said, My mom always says family can be harder than deployment. I laughed, but it wasn't humor. Your mom's not wrong. 1. By the time I got home, the sun had dipped behind the trees, painting the street in orange and gray. I carried the groceries inside, set them down, and opened a beer. The quiet was good company. 10 minutes later, my phone lit up again, but this time it was a video call. Melissa. I almost declined it, but curiosity won. I answered without saying anything. Her face filled the screen, red-eyed, wild, furious. You think this is funny? She shouted before I could even speak. Mom's crying. The house payment bounced. My fiancé is threatening to leave me because of your stupid paperwork stunt. Hi to you too, I said deadpan. You're insane, Claire. You're supposed to help family. I did, I said calmly. For 3 years. Now it's your turn. Her lip curled. You always think you're better than us because you wear that uniform. Guess what? Nobody cares about your little soldier pride in real life. It tilted my head. Then why are you calling me like I'm your bank? That one hit. She blinked, speechless for a moment. Then came the shriek. You'll regret this. I'll make sure of it. I hung up mid-sentence and stared at my reflection in the black screen. I wasn't angry. I was tired. Tired in the kind of way that doesn't come from lack of sleep, but from years of carrying people who mistake your generosity for weakness. At 2,100, another message popped up, this time a group chat rename, The Family Before Claire Lost Her Mind. Cute. The messages inside were the usual smear campaign, half-truths, dramatics, rewritten history. Mom even attached a Facebook post about being betrayed by your own blood. The comments were already piling up with sympathy. So sorry, Linda. Some kids just forget their roots. Maybe the army changed her. I took a screenshot of the post and sent it to my work email. Not because I cared about social media, but because in the military world, optics matter. If anyone from the base stumbled across it, I wanted my own record. I thought about replying something scathing, something final, but instead, I did what no one in my family ever learned to do. I chose silence. I cooked dinner, watched a documentary about submarines, and didn't check my phone again until morning. When I woke up, there were 2 voicemails waiting. One from Mom, one from an unknown number. I played Mom's first. Claire, this is your last chance to fix this. We can't pay both loans alone. The bank says you're out, but you can still help voluntarily. Don't destroy your own family. Then the second voicemail played, and it wasn't Mom, it was Mr. Calder. Lieutenant Morgan, I just wanted to inform you that the Grants have been notified of your release. They were not pleased. We've had multiple complaints, but rest assured, everything remains legally finalized. If they contact you directly, I suggest you document it. Have a good day. I smiled to myself. I plan to. By midday, the harassment switched platforms. Facebook, text, even emails. The narrative changed hourly. I was either heartless or brainwashed. I didn't answer any of it. At work, Hayes caught me between meetings. "Everything holding steady, Lieutenant?" "Steady enough," I said. He nodded. "Good. Remember, people lash out when their control slips. Don't let them drag you back into the mud." I thought about that phrase the rest of the day, drag you back into the mud, because that's exactly what they were trying to do. My family thrived in mess. It's where they hid their power plays. I used to mistake chaos for closeness. Now I knew better. That evening, I sat by the window again, the same spot where I first made the decision to break away. I watched the streetlights flicker on one by one, each glow steady and separate. Independence looked a lot like peace if you stayed still long enough to see it. My phone buzzed once more, and this time I picked it up just to end the suspense. It was from Mom. No paragraphs, no drama, just one sentence. "You've humiliated this family for the last time." I typed one line back. "No, Mom, you did that yourselves." Then I turned the phone off completely, set it on the counter, and went to bed without checking it again. Outside, rain started to fall, soft but steady, tapping against the window like distant artillery fire. Familiar, rhythmic, harmless. Inside, the only sound was my own breathing, and it was finally even. The knock came hard enough to rattle the doorframe. I'd just set down my coffee when it started. 3 sharp bangs, a pause, then 2 more. Not the delivery guy, not a neighbor. The rhythm was too deliberate. I froze halfway between the kitchen and the hallway, mug still warm in my hand. The peephole showed what I already knew. My mother and Melissa stood in the hallway. Mom's face was set in that tight-lipped expression I knew from every argument we'd ever had. The one that said, "This is your fault, and I will make you see it." Melissa looked worse, hair wild, eyes red, arms folded, like she was ready for a fight she'd already lost. They hadn't driven 200 miles just to talk. I set the coffee down on the counter and took a slow breath. Of course, I muttered to myself. Of course they'd show up. The pounding started again. "Claire!" Mom's voice came through the door, high and trembling. "Open this door right now. We need to talk." I didn't answer. "We drove all the way from Boise," she yelled. "You can't ignore us forever." Melissa's voice followed, shriller, closer to a scream. "You ruined everything. The bank froze our accounts, Mom's card got declined, my car's about to be repossessed. You think this is funny?" I turned on the video intercom beside the door. The camera feed flickered to life, showing both of them standing there, Mom clutching her purse like it was armor, Melissa pacing with her phone in hand. The hallway light buzzed faintly overhead. I didn't open the door. Instead, I picked up my phone and opened the 911 app. My voice came out calm and steady. "Seattle Police Department," the dispatcher answered. "Hi," I said evenly. "I'd like to report 2 individuals outside my apartment yelling and refusing to leave." "Do you know them?" the dispatcher asked. "Yes," I said. "They're my family. But they're not welcome here." There was a pause on the line. Then, "Understood, ma'am. Are they trying to force entry?" "Not yet," I said, glancing at the camera just as Melissa slammed her hand against the door. The sound vibrated through the wood. "They're shouting and disturbing the peace." "Alu. Officers are en route," the dispatcher said. "Please stay inside and don't engage." I hung up and set the phone on record, propping it against the counter so the audio would catch everything. Years of being gaslit by "we never said that" had taught me to always have proof. Through the door, Mom's voice cracked. "Claire, you're destroying this family. You think cutting us off makes you strong? You're selfish. You're heartless." Melissa's voice rose behind her. "You think you're better than us because you have a uniform? Newsflash, you're just as broken as the rest of us." I stood there, breathing slow, keeping my tone low enough for the mic. "If they act like intruders," I whispered, "then the line between family and boundary no longer exists." Minutes later, the faint sound of sirens grew from somewhere down the street. The pounding stopped. Mom's voice softened, panicked. "Claire, honey, please. We didn't mean it like that. Just come talk to us." "Hen." I didn't move. The red and blue lights reflected through the peephole. Then 2 uniformed officers appeared on camera. 1 man, 1 woman. They spoke briefly with my mother, before the male officer raised his hand to signal calm. Mom pointed at my door, shouting something I couldn't make out. The officer shook his head and said something that made her freeze mid-sentence. I cracked the door lock, just enough to hear. "She's my daughter," Mom insisted, her voice trembling with fury. "I have the right to talk to her." "Ma'am," the officer said, patient but firm, "you have the right to call or write, not to trespass on private property. She's an adult. If she's asked you to leave, you need to go." Melissa broke in, crying now. "She destroyed our finances. The bank says we're responsible for everything. She's ruined us." "That's between you and the bank," the officer replied. "But you can't be here." Mom turned toward the camera, as if she could see me behind it. Her eyes burned. "You'll regret this, Claire. Blood doesn't disappear because you say so." I didn't answer. I just stood silently, hand still on the doorknob. The officer guided them toward the stairs. Melissa kept muttering. Mom kept shaking her head, and their footsteps echoed down the concrete hall until the sound disappeared completely. I closed the deadbolt and leaned my forehead against the cool wood. My pulse had been steady the whole time, but now it started to slow. The kind of calm that comes after you realize the worst already happened and you survived it. The officers didn't knock. They didn't need to. The situation was handled, clean and quiet. The flashing lights faded through the blinds as they left. I slid down to the floor, back against the wall, phone still recording. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from release. The kind of tremor that happens when the body finally catches up to what the mind already decided that you're done being the one who bends first. The recording kept going for another minute. I saved it and renamed the file Operation Boundary, Incident Log the 18th of April 2025. I sat there a while longer, staring at the dark screen, listening to the sound of my own breathing. The apartment was quiet again, peaceful, even. Outside, a car alarm chirped once, then stopped. The city carried on like nothing had happened. I stood and went to the window. From there, I could see the faint reflection of red and blue still flashing somewhere in the distance, turning the wet pavement into a smear of color. People were walking dogs, carrying groceries, talking into phones oblivious to the tiny domestic war that had just ended on my doorstep. I poured another cup of coffee and sat at the table. My hands were steadier now. I scrolled through my phone, new texts from Mom, unread voicemails, Facebook notifications pinging like popcorn. I ignored all of it. Then I saw the new post. Mom's Facebook update. All caps. Sometimes the child you trust most betrays you the worst. My own daughter stole from her parents and ruined our credit. Some people never learn gratitude. Dozens of comments already stacked below it. So sorry, Linda. Unbelievable. Some kids just forget where they came from. The old me would have felt my chest tighten, panic rising like heat. I would have started typing explanations, screenshots, rational defenses. But this new quiet inside me, the one that came with hard boundaries and police reports, didn't even flinch. Instead, I opened my work email and wrote something simple to my department. Subject: Clarification Personal Matter. Hi team. If you happen to see rumors about me online, please ignore them. Some people fight boundaries with lies. I'm fine and appreciate your professionalism. Lecky Claire Morgan. I hit send, closed the laptop, and took a sip of coffee. The bitterness felt grounding. The world didn't stop. The sky didn't fall. No one knocked again. Outside, the city lights blinked through the drizzle. And for the first time in years, my home felt like exactly what it should have always been mine. The post spread faster than I expected. By mid-morning, people I hadn't spoken to in years were messaging me. Cousins, old classmates, even an ex-boyfriend from ROTC, who started his text with, "Hey, saw what your mom posted," like he'd stumbled upon some family soap opera instead of a smear campaign. I scrolled through the comments under Mom's post again, just to see how low the creativity had sunk. One woman wrote, "After all Linda did for her, what a shame." Another said, "The military changes people. They think they're above family." And Melissa, ever the cheerleader, had left a heart emoji under it like this was some group achievement. I didn't react. I'd learned the hard way that the fastest way to lose a fight was to swing at every jab. So I did what I always did best, kept my hands steady, and let the other side burn through their own ammo. At the base, I kept my focus where it belonged. The tech unit was prepping for a major systems test, and Hayes had assigned me to lead the coordination drill. It was the kind of job that needed precision, calm, and a brain that didn't flinch. Perfect timing. When I walked into the comms room, Sergeant Miller looked up from his monitor and smirked. "Ma'am, your phone's been blowing up like a comm tower in a lightning storm." "I noticed," I said, setting my bag down. "You want me to start calling you Lieutenant Trending Topic?" He joked. I gave him a look that could have frozen jet fuel. He raised both hands. "Kidding, ma'am. Totally kidding." The rest of the team kept their heads down, but I could feel the curiosity humming under the surface. That was fine. I wasn't here to give them gossip. I was here to prove that no Facebook rant could shake my chain of command. By 1100 hours, we were knee-deep in simulations, testing emergency frequencies. The hum of computers and the steady tap of keyboards were better company than any apology I'd never get. At lunch, Hayes stopped by with his coffee. "You holding up?" he asked, casual but not careless. "I'm good, sir," I said. He nodded slowly. "I heard some of your family noise spilled online." "Of course it did," I said. "That's their battlefield." He took a sip of coffee, watching me for a beat. "You handled tougher missions than this." "This one just comes with worse optics," I said. "Let them talk," Hayes said. "Truth has a longer shelf life than gossip. You don't need to defend what time will expose." He walked off after that. No speech, no hand on the shoulder. Just a reminder that the best soldiers don't waste bullets on noise. When I got home that evening, the group chat was still alive with chaos. Mom had posted another update. "I raised a soldier, but not a daughter." That one had even more traction. I imagined her sitting at the kitchen table, wine glass in hand, watching the likes roll in like validation points. I closed the app and opened my email instead. I typed a message to my HR officer at work. Subject: Online activity, family matter. He Denise. I wanted to flag that personal accusations have been made about me on social media by family members. They are untrue and being handled privately. Please disregard any posts if they cross your feed. Best, Lieutenant Claire Morgan. Professional. Calm. No drama. The kind of message that disarms gossip before it starts. After sending it, I made myself dinner, nothing fancy, just stir-fry and rice, and sat by the window again. I could still see the faint reflection of the city in the glass, the hum of evening traffic below. Life didn't pause for anyone's tantrum. My phone buzzed once more. This time, it was from Marcus, a systems analyst in my unit who'd become something of a quiet friend. Marcus. Saw the post. People are ridiculous. Don't let them get in your head. Me. Already evicted them from that space. Marcus. Good. You lead with steadiness. People notice. I smiled at that. Not because it flattered me, but because it reminded me that the version of myself reflected in the eyes of decent people was still intact. The version my family tried to bury under shame wasn't gone, it had just stopped playing their game. The next morning, Mom's post disappeared. Either she deleted it herself or someone at the bank or one of her friends with common sense told her to stop. A few hours later, I got an email notification. New message from Summit First National. Inside was a formal letter, signed and sealed. This document confirms that Lieutenant Claire Morgan has been fully released from all financial liabilities associated with the Grant family mortgage and vehicle loan. I read it twice, not because I didn't believe it, but because the words felt almost too clean, too final. Years of quiet sacrifice reduced to one paragraph and a corporate signature. I printed it out, slid it into a clear sleeve, and set it on my desk next to my discharge certificates and commendations. It didn't belong with the medals, but it felt just as earned. At 6 p.m., Marcus texted again. Bar downtown, celebrating the system test. You should come. Not tonight, I replied. You sure? Could use your poker face for trivia. Rain check, I said. He sent a thumbs-up emoji, and I could almost hear his easy laugh through the text. Instead of going out, I made tea, wrapped myself in the old army blanket I'd kept since training, and watched the rain slide down the glass. Outside, the city lights reflected in every droplet, 1,000 versions of calm. My phone buzzed one more time before I could silence it. A message from an unknown number. You'll pay for this, Claire. You think you've won? You haven't. The area code was Boise. I didn't need to guess who it was. I put the phone face down again, not with anger but indifference. Winning wasn't the point. Freedom was. I poured the rest of my tea and took another sip. The warmth spread through my chest, steadying, grounding. The world outside kept moving. Trains humming in the distance, tires on wet pavement, the rhythm of normal life that had nothing to do with me and everything to do with peace. On my desk, the letter from the bank caught the soft glow from the lamp. The embossed seal shimmered faintly in gold. I reached over and turned the light off. It didn't need to shine. It had already done its job. The room went quiet again, the kind of quiet that felt like armor instead of emptiness. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and listened to the sound of rain tapping against the glass, steady and sure, like a clock finally keeping time on my terms. The letter from the bank sat on my desk for 3 days before I touched it again. Not because I doubted it, but because it felt like holding something sacred. It wasn't just paper, it was proof that I'd finally undone 3 years of quiet servitude. Every time I walked past the desk, the embossed seal caught a sliver of light, like it wanted to remind me that peace sometimes comes in envelopes, not apologies. On the 4th day, I framed it. I bought a cheap black frame from Target, printed a small label that said, Operation Boundary, completed, and hung it above my desk between a deployment photo and a framed map of Washington State. It didn't look out of place. It looked earned. I took a picture and sent it to Mr. Calder with a short message. Thank you again. I can finally breathe. He replied within minutes. Glad to help, Lieutenant. Keep that letter safe. You'd be surprised how many people never get this far. He wasn't wrong. At work, things had settled into rhythm again. The base ran its operations, drills continued, and life moved forward as if nothing monumental had just shifted in mine. But inside, everything was quieter, lighter. During a systems briefing that week, Hayes called me out unexpectedly. Lieutenant Morgan, he said, the network redundancy plan you proposed, good work. It's steady leadership like that that keeps us out of chaos. It wasn't about the compliment. It was the word steady. That's what I'd been chasing without knowing it. Not happiness, not revenge, just steadiness. After the meeting, I walked back to my office with Marcus. He nudged me lightly with his elbow. You look less like someone about to detonate. Good observation, I said. Something change? Something ended? I said. Sometimes that's the same thing. He grinned. Cryptic, but I'll take it. Later that afternoon, an email notification popped up from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read, Request for clarification. Grant family account. For a second, I thought it might be another bureaucratic loose end, but when I opened it, my stomach tightened. It was from a Grant family financial liaison, which was just a dramatic way of saying Mom had tried to use a legal-sounding email to intimidate me. The message read, Dear Lieutenant Morgan, we have been informed of your recent actions affecting shared financial obligations with Linda and Melissa Grant. We would appreciate your immediate response to resolve the confusion surrounding these accounts. Regards, the Grant family liaison, Linda Grant. They didn't even hide that it was her. I read it once, then twice, and laughed quietly. I replied with 3 sentences. All accounts have been closed in accordance with bank policy. I am no longer a co-signer or liable party. Please contact Summit First National for any future concerns. Then I signed it. Respectfully, Lieutenant Claire Morgan, U.S. Army. Nothing kills a guilt trip faster than a signature block with rank. That evening, I took a walk through the park near my apartment. The air was crisp, the sun setting low over the trees, painting everything gold. A group of kids played soccer in the open field, their laughter carrying across the grass. The world hadn't stopped spinning just because mine had shifted. When I got home, my phone buzzed. A new text from Melissa. For a second, I considered ignoring it. Then I saw the first 3 words. I'm sorry for... I opened it fully. I'm sorry for everything. No excuses. I went too far. I didn't realize how much I relied on you until I lost that. I just wanted to say it, that's all. No paragraphs of manipulation. No half-blame disguised as apology. Just 6 clean words that finally sounded human. I stared at the message, thumb hovering over the screen. My instinct told me to reply, to say something polite, something that would close the loop. But another part of me, The part that had been cut open and cauterized by years of guilt told me to leave it where it was. So I set the phone down and let silence be the answer. Some doors don't need to be slammed, they just need to stay closed. The next morning, the Facebook post was gone. Deleted, scrubbed, vanished like it never existed. Maybe Melissa convinced Mom to take it down. Maybe the truth finally caught up. Either way, I didn't care enough to find out. At 9 a.m., my work inbox pinged with a new email from Mr. Calder. Good news, Lieutenant. The final release documents have been archived. You're officially clear of all liability. Congratulations again. Attached was a scan of the completed document with the words, "Account terminated, verified," stamped in red across the bottom. I printed one more copy, not for framing, but for keeping. It wasn't about proof anymore. It was about closure. That weekend, I met Marcus for coffee downtown. He handed me a file folder with some tech specs and said, "Off duty, we don't talk about work. That's the rule." "Fine," I said. "What do we talk about?" He thought for a second. "Peace, or the lack of it." "I've got both," I said. He smiled. "That's new." We talked for an hour about nothing important: music, bad takeout, traffic, ordinary things. The kind of conversation that doesn't demand emotional labor. When I got home, I noticed how the light hit the framed bank letter above my desk. The gold seal shimmered faintly, almost blending into the photo beside it, the one from my deployment. In both, I was standing in uniform, calm, unshaken, holding something that couldn't be taken back. Later that night, my phone buzzed again. Mom, this time. The preview showed just the first few words. "We miss you." I locked the screen before I could read the rest. Missing me wasn't the same as respecting me. I'd learned that the hard way. Instead, I opened my laptop and started typing a short entry into a private document I'd been keeping. Not a journal, more like mission notes. At the top I wrote, Operation Boundary, Final Outcome. Objective, End involuntary financial dependency. Method, Strategic withdrawal, legal route, no engagement. Result, successful. Collateral, family ties, acceptable loss. Status, secure. I read it over once, added a final line, and closed the file. Observation, peace feels strange when you've only known survival. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing through the trees. The sound was clean, no static, no interference, just air moving freely. I turned off the lights, looked once more at the framed letter, and smiled. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even justice. It was something quieter, steadier. Freedom, signed in ink. I didn't plan to change anything about my life after the whole thing ended, but somehow, everything changed anyway. The mornings felt different, quieter, cleaner. I woke up without that low-grade tension humming in the back of my skull, the kind you only notice when it finally disappears. The coffee tasted stronger. The silence didn't echo anymore. It just sat comfortably in the room with me, like a guest who finally knew how to behave. Work picked up pace as summer rolled in. The unit was assigned to assist with a state emergency communications drill, one of those large-scale operations where chaos is the main objective, and your job is to keep the signal alive no matter what. Hayes put me in charge of the coordination team. "You've got the nerves for it," he said. "No drama, no noise, just results." It made me laugh, because that had become my entire life philosophy. No drama, no noise, just results. The drill ran for 2 days straight. We worked through rain, bad connections, and fried circuits, but the system held. The moment the test wrapped, Hayes clapped me on the shoulder. "You lead like a professional," he said. "People trust steady hands." That stuck with me longer than I expected. Trust wasn't something I'd heard in a while, not in the same sentence as my name, at least. After the drill, I drove home with the windows down. The smell of pine rolled through the car, and the sky stretched open over the highway. It was the same route I'd driven months before when I left Boise, but this time it didn't feel like escape. It felt like arrival. That night, Marcus texted, "Drill went smooth. You free for dinner this week?" My treat for keeping us from frying the comms tower. I almost said no out of habit. For years, I'd turned down anything that looked remotely like connection. It always came with strings. but something about the simplicity of his tone made me say yes. We met at a quiet diner near the river. He ordered a burger, I ordered soup, and we talked about small things, nothing heavy, nothing loaded. He told me he'd grown up in a military family too, how his brother hadn't spoken to their father in years, how family silence could be both weapon and medicine. At one point, he said, "You know what's funny? People think soldiers are used to conflict, but most of us just learn how to survive it quietly." I nodded. "Yeah, and sometimes walking away is the only real tactic left." He smiled. "Sounds like you finally did that." We finished our meal, split the check, and walked out under the neon diner sign. It flickered once before going steady again. I remember thinking how fitting that was. Over the next few weeks, I fell into a rhythm. Work, gym, evenings at home with music low and lights soft. I even started sleeping through the night. The nightmares that used to come of shouting, of slammed doors, of obligations disguised as love had stopped showing up. One Friday, Hayes called me into his office. "Morgan, how do you feel about taking lead on the Signal Readiness Initiative next quarter?" I raised an eyebrow. "That's a lot of responsibility." He smiled. "You've been carrying more than that for years. Might as well get paid for it." I accepted. Not because I needed to prove anything, but because I wanted to build something that was mine. Not Mom's, not Melissa's, mine. When I got home that evening, I opened my laptop to draft a plan for the new project, but my eyes drifted to the framed letter on the wall again. The bank seal still shimmered faintly under the light. Next to it, I'd pinned a small sticky note that simply said, "Steady hands." It reminded me why I did what I did. Around midnight, my phone buzzed with a notification from an unknown number. I opened it reluctantly. "Hey Claire, this is Melissa. I just wanted to tell you I got a new job. Things are better now. I mean it this time. No apology, no guilt, just a statement." I stared at it for a while, then typed back, "Good, I hope you keep it steady." That was all. No punctuation, no warmth, just closure disguised as politeness. She didn't reply. The next morning, a delivery showed up at my door, a small brown box with no return address. Inside was a photo frame wrapped in tissue paper. It was the old family picture from years ago, back when Dad still smiled and Melissa hadn't yet discovered envy. A note was tucked behind the photo. "Maybe one day we can take another one. Mom." I set the frame on the counter and looked at it for a long time. We were standing in front of the old house, sunlight in our eyes, my uniform freshly pressed from basic training. Back then, I thought the world was simple. Work hard, love your family, do the right thing. I didn't realize how many people mistake your kindness for weakness until they run out of favors to cash in. I didn't throw the photo away. I didn't hang it either. I just placed it in a drawer and shut it quietly. Not out of anger, just because I didn't need to see it to remember. Sunday came slow and quiet. I went for a jog along the river trail, the water catching light like scattered glass. Families walked with kids. Dogs barked. Someone played guitar near the benches. It all felt distant but peaceful, like background noise in a life that finally belonged to me. Back home, I made coffee and sat at my desk. I opened my notes from the last few months, everything I'd written since the first day of Operation Boundary. It wasn't long, a few pages of thoughts, lists, and moments, but near the bottom, I'd written something I'd almost forgotten. Sometimes protecting yourself looks like abandonment to the people who benefited from your pain. I stared at the line for a while, then closed the file. I didn't need to add more. Some lessons are better left as scars than stories. That evening, Marcus called. "You free tomorrow? We're doing a small get-together. Nothing formal, just good food, bad jokes." End of 40. "Sounds tolerable," I said. He laughed. "You say that like it's a compliment." "It is," I said. After hanging up, I stood by the window for a long time, watching the streetlights flicker on. The reflection in the glass looked different now, same face, different weight. My posture wasn't tense anymore. My hands didn't clench when the phone buzzed. My jaw didn't tighten at the word family. The silence in the room wasn't empty. It was earned. I turned off the lamp, leaving only the faint light from the street outside. On the wall, the framed letter caught a final glint before fading into the shadows. The apartment settled into stillness. I leaned back on the couch, listening to the hum of the city outside. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation. The world was moving exactly how it should, and I was finally still enough to let it. The morning sunlight hit my apartment window in that quiet way only Seattle can pull off, soft, gray, but somehow still bright. The kind of light that doesn't demand your attention. It just exists, like a calm reminder that the world goes on whether you're ready or not. I stretched, poured my coffee, and stood by the window, watching the mist drift off Lake Union in slow ribbons. A year had passed since the day my mother told me to stay away forever, and somehow I'd done exactly that. No contact, no drama, no more proving, fixing, or explaining. I didn't celebrate the anniversary. I didn't even realize it until I checked the date on my phone. What hit me most wasn't sadness, it was how normal the peace felt now. Work had become simpler too. Not easier, just simpler. Hayes had moved on to a higher command post in DC, leaving me to manage the new communications team. Marcus was now my second in command, which meant the office had fewer broken routers and slightly more sarcastic jokes. He walked into my office that morning with 2 coffees and said, "You know, you're the only officer I've worked with who doesn't make crisis sound like a crisis." I smirked. Maybe because it never is. It's just noise until someone decides to stay calm. "That's what I mean," he said. "You've got that thing, command presence without volume. It freaks people out in a good way." "Years of practice," I said. "Family was my first training ground." He laughed and set my coffee down. "Well, whatever they did, it worked. You're solid. Solid is a step up from emotionally distant, so I'll take it." He grinned and headed back to his station, leaving the smell of cheap coffee and something like closure behind. Later that afternoon, I received an email from the bank. The subject line read, "Account update, reference case closed." For a split second, I thought it might be a glitch, but when I opened it, it was just a procedural notice confirming that my name had been permanently removed from every record tied to the Grant household. The words "finalized" and "archived" stood out like a medal. I didn't save it this time. I just deleted it. I didn't need evidence anymore. On my way home that night, I stopped by a small hardware store near Pike Place and bought a ceramic flower pot. I wasn't sure why at first. I'd never been good with plants. But something about the act of tending to something alive, something that grew quietly, felt right. At home, I placed it on the windowsill, poured in soil, and planted a single cactus, a small one, about the size of a fist. It stood upright, defiant, self-sufficient. The tag said it needed minimal water and plenty of light. I smiled at that. Sounded familiar. That night, while cleaning out a drawer, I found the old family photo again, the one Mom had mailed months earlier. I sat on the couch and studied it under the warm lamplight. Dad had his arm around Mom, Melissa had her hair in pigtails, and I was standing off to the side, holding a slice of cake, smiling too wide for a kid who clearly didn't fit in the frame. I flipped the photo over. The back still had Mom's handwriting. "Maybe one day we can take another one." The words didn't hurt anymore. They just existed like a postcard from a past life. I didn't throw it away. I just slid it into a box marked MISC and pushed it to the back of the closet. Some things didn't need closure. They just needed storage. Saturday came with the kind of rain that makes the whole city smell like wet pavement and coffee. I didn't have plans, but Marcus called anyway. "You're not going to sit inside all weekend, are you?" he asked. "Define sit," I said. "Fine, be mysterious. But I'm dragging you out next weekend. There's a veterans dinner downtown. They're honoring local officers who worked on the Signal Readiness Initiative. Guess whose name's on the list?" I blinked. "You're kidding." "Nope, you're getting a plaque. Try to look excited, or at least pretend." "Excitement's not in the manual," I said, but I was smiling. Yeah, see you Monday, Lieutenant Calm." When the line went dead, I stood for a long time in the quiet hum of my apartment. The city outside was still buzzing cars, sirens, life, but inside, everything was still. I looked over at the cactus on the windowsill. A droplet of rain had leaked through the tiny gap in the frame and landed on its surface. It sat there, glinting, then slid down the green spine before disappearing into the soil. It felt poetic, but not in a way that hurt, more like an acknowledgement that everything ends up where it should. I sat down with my notebook, something I hadn't opened since Operation Boundary. I flipped to a blank page and wrote a new heading, Operation Equilibrium. Objective: Maintain peace without apology. Method: stillness under pressure. Result: ongoing. Then I put the pen down and stared out the window again. The rain eased into a drizzle, the sky dimming to that soft silver that Seattle does best. Somewhere down the street, someone laughed. It was a light, easy sound that carried through the air like it belonged there. My phone buzzed once more, a single notification from an unknown number. Hope you're well? No name, no context. I didn't need one. I read it once, then deleted it. Not out of anger, just efficiency. Not every ghost deserved acknowledgement. I leaned back and exhaled, the kind of slow breath that felt like shedding old skin. Outside, a patch of light broke through the clouds, bouncing off the lake like a small mirror. It wasn't dramatic, just natural like peace never left. It had just been waiting for me to stop running. I stood, poured another cup of coffee, and looked at my reflection in the glass. Same uniform, same face. But now the woman looking back wasn't the one frozen at a family barbecue, holding a cake she never got to cut. She was the one who built her own table, brewed her own coffee, and learned that love without respect isn't love at all, it's debt. The cactus sat still on the sill, catching the last light of the day. I smiled and whispered, mostly to myself, "You'll do just fine." Then I turned off the light, leaving only the glow from the street outside, a quiet, unbothered kind of brightness that didn't ask for permission to exist. It wasn't a story about revenge anymore. It was a story about return to self, to stillness, to balance. And somewhere between the silence and the steady hum of the city, I realized I'd finally come home,